Kicking it off with latest on Kane Velazquez. Denied bail and cannot request bail again unless charges are added or dropped, at least for the next month or so.
Yeah, until I think it's April 12th, I think was the day, but it was in well into April, yeah. This is such a tragic story. That's not a surprise. I was kind of told by a couple of people in the legal profession that he was probably going to be denied because he used a gun and attempted murder, and that people like that are probably not going to get out on bail, even with the extenuating circumstances of the situation. But it only makes everything that much more tragic. I mean, there is the thing of Harry Gillard that allegedly perpetrated the crime against the child, got out with no bail. Like, he didn't have to post anything. He was just let out. And, by being let out, which was against the wishes of the district attorney in Santa Clara County, that led to all this. And that's not a justification for what Kane did. But it just makes the story so much more tragic. And, it's, Kane was trying to defend his family, and in doing so, he destroyed his family. The kids, he may be, he's probably going to be put away for a long time for this. And, it's such a weird thing, because almost anyone who knows the circumstances is going to feel sorry for him. But I don't know what the answer is, because he did make a horrible decision. And I know some people said that they would under the circumstances, and perhaps you would. I mean, I can, obviously, put yourself in that position, and I could see maybe not doing exactly what he did, but I could certainly see taking a baseball bat and trying to find that guy, or a gun for that matter. I could absolutely, see and understand the emotions that would cause you to do that. So, it's a bad story, and it's got worse again today, and it's going to get worse as time goes on. And I don't know what else to say about it, but it is just such a tragedy. And, just because of how the whole thing, again, it's someone who would, under any normal circumstances would never do anything like this. And it was the most horrible circumstance that caused him to do it. And in doing so, has basically led to the ruination in a lot of ways of his kids growing up without a father is what's probably going to happen. And it's just so sad. And him, being put away it's, I don't know that, again, even if a jury has sympathy for him, it's hard to overlook certain aspects of those facts. Maybe they will. I don't know. It's going to be a very major case when it ends up coming up here. I can see that, especially locally.
So what's the story with Becky Lynch?
So she was wrestling on Sunday in Allentown and was injured. They were in a three-way with Rhea Ripley, I believe, and Bianca Belair. And it was a throat injury. And they said it was a fracture of the throat. But it was a throat injury. She was off TV. She was at TV. She was backstage at the show, but they didn't put her on TV, probably due to difficulty talking and the injury. And probably out for a couple of weeks, but we're told it does not threaten WrestleMania.
She did an Instagram post and vowed to be back next week, so
yeah, maybe.
I guess we'll see if she will or not.
Yeah.
She had a selfie from in the hospital, so,
But she was out of the hospital tonight, so she very well may be already. The only thing we heard was that it was, a thing with your voice, and, bad. You can work around a bad voice And then it can heal. So, man, maybe it will heal in a week.
What's happening on Madison Square Garden?
Okay, so this is basically the story of, what happened as far as the advertising and, the Austin Theory thing and everything like that. So the match was when Bobby Lashley was never going to be in the match. He was advertised, but they knew he was out. And it was, wasn't anything imminent, but, they knew it was Austin Theory. At first, it was going to be Austin Theory, and, they decided it's better not to advertise that. So it changed several times. It started as Austin Theory, it ended as Austin Theory, but there were other names thrown in there, as the time came in. So it was never a lock. And with the Rollins thing, it was weird because, again, they advertised Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins was advertised, and then all of a sudden the advertising for Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins was pulled, and Reigns was going to wrestle a mystery guy, and it ended up being Seth Rollins. And you go like, well, why did they change the advertising? And the reason is because that they had, again, when they were bouncing around ideas, they bounced around other ideas, including other people other than Seth Rollins. We were at the end, they ended up going with the guy who they originally started with in Seth Rollins. So that's what happened there. So you had, that show had 3 matches that went under 4 minutes. McIntyre and Sami Zayn was 3 minutes. Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins was 4 minutes. 2 world title matches, 4 minutes and a minute 35 for Lesnar and Austin Theory. But, they played that video, and there were a lot of people, there were people who were upset, no doubt about it, but there were also people who thought they got to see it happening, and they got to see a big angle, and, at a house show. First time, I can't even remember the last time they shot an angle at a house show that was played up this big. I remember in the 90s, I guess when, Kevin Nash won the title from Bob Backlund in like that, whatever it was, 9-second match at the Garden. But that's just going back to like 1994. But I do remember once I was at a house show in San Jose, and Austin collapsed at the house show. And it was clearly an angle. And I just thought that, like, what are they doing this for? And it ended up on television. So they did an angle, but, that was, I'm thinking that's like late 90s. So I can't even remember, I can't remember the last time that they had a show that they advertised this heavily. And, all that push did work to a degree. They did not have an embarrassing attendance or anything like that. They got a decent crowd. Nothing like they were getting in September. But the New York market is so burned out with so many shows. The next AEW's not selling well. There's a Raw at the Barclays Center that's the advance is terrible. So the fact this show was not doing well until they really started hammering it hard on television, and they actually sold about 5,000 tickets in the last couple of weeks, and so they did a decent crowd and everything like that. So. But that's with like all stops. It was, Lesnar, Roman Reigns, Ronda Rousey.
Pulling out all the stops and then delivering that.
Well, like I said, there were people who were upset, but there were a lot of people who thought it was a great show because they got that angle at the end. Even if those matches were really short, that, they got to see a big angle, so the big WrestleMania angle. So it's a mixed feeling. It wasn't like everybody hated it, but there were people who didn't like it, and they're not going to be back at the Garden. I don't even know what the next Garden date is. I don't think they announced at the show a new date. They were pushing, the Barclays show, and they got a Nassau Coliseum show in May. So those are the next 2 in the market. But as far as but it's a really tough market, and it was conceded to me. When the show, even with that push, it wasn't like they sold out or came close, and the attendance under, historical terms for Madison Square Garden would be considered a not terrible, but certainly like kind of bad house. And it was with every big gun there. So, that's just it's just the state of New York wrestling. New York and Chicago, which were the big, AEW just, did, roughly 20,000 people, over 18,000 paid for their first show there. And since then, and it wasn't that many months ago, and since then, every show has declined for the most part, I believe. But they're, now they're way down to the levels WWF was. And WWF is probably going to be lower than their levels. In Chicago, the same thing happened where, AEW did those two sellouts in August and September, and then another sellout in November, and then the next time they came back, even with Punk and MJF, and granted it was a blizzard, but they did just over 5,000, and then WWE is above that, but WWE, traditionally, in that All-State Arena, they usually do 10,000 people, and their last show didn't do that well either. So, those markets that were the strong markets that got hit, got shows over and over and over again because they were the strong markets. Now they're both very tough markets.
All right, take us through these ratings.
Okay, let's go. Let me just get to that. The news on Friday, while it was above average, it wasn't like it had been, the previous Friday or certainly like Monday and Wednesday of last week, where both Raw and AEW were clearly hurt by the rating, and NXT as well. So both shows were actually above what they'd been doing. The news was still fairly strong. AEW on the Rampage show, which usually does second in the time slot behind the NBA, was third behind Fox News in the time slot, but the number was up 15%, 16% in viewers, 26% in 1849 from the number of the week before. But the number of the week before was a very low number. It was 545,000 viewers and 0.22. So it's better than it was doing. The real big first quarter with the Sammy Guevara, Andrade, and Darby Allin three-way match, that did well. And then, it declined as the show went on. But that one was, they did 352,000 viewers and 18 to 49, skewed very young. So, they were 18 to 34, they were up. They almost doubled last week in 18 to 34. 35 to 49, they were up, but not nearly at the same level. Countdown to Revolution, they've been doing in the low threes for those countdown shows on Friday nights. This one had the benefit of a wrestling lead-in, so you would think it would do better, and it did not. 269,000 viewers and 0.08. So that's, the retention, coming right out of that show was not good. So that number was certainly disappointing. It was fifth in the time slot, behind the NBA, Fox News, CNN, and Soccer on Univision Deportes. But that, that's not like that show is expected to do a big number anyway, but it was lower than it has been doing. SmackDown, 2,261,000 viewers, which is a good number, 0.59, up a little bit in 18 to 49 from last week. Let me see, it was up 7% in viewers, but only 3% in 18 to 49. The big quarters were, it was one of those interesting Friday nights where SmackDown was in last place among all network shows in total viewers, and in first place in 18 to 49 and 18 to 34. So, and that's not unusual, and that's a good thing. Not that last place is that you strive to be in last place, but first place in 18 to 49 is a lot more important than last place in total viewers, and a lot more important than first place in total viewers or anything like that. So, but the Ronda Rousey, Sonya Deville segment was the high point, and it was at the end of the show. So that is, whatever. I mean, it's and the Roman Reigns Paul Heyman interview was the other real high point of the show. So that's the deal there.
WWE announced Vader is going to be going into the Hall of Fame WrestleMania weekend.
Yeah, well, he's a Hall of Famer. I don't think there's any arguing. That he had a really spectacular career. Really, I mean, aside from his first year in the AWA when he was a rookie, probably the worst part of his career, not even probably, was his run in the WWF. For a lot of different reasons. But I mean, he had been fired by WCW after the brawl with Paul Orndorff, where he was insubordinate and all that. And so it was natural at that point that he would probably go to WWF. And when he went there, they had all big plans for him, make him world champion, the whole bit. I mean, he was Vader, the guy, the greatest moving big man of that, in history. And he fell out of favor there. He was the thing that happened in 96, 97 when Shawn Michaels was champion, where he lost to Sid Vicious and then he regained it at the Alamo Dome in San Antonio at the Royal Rumble, the big one where they did the stadium show with Psycho Sid. So that was originally Vader in that spot. Vader was supposed to win the title there, and Shawn basically politicked, and just, a lot of guys they just didn't want Vader to get that spot for whatever reason. And so he didn't. And it was changed to Sid. And Vader kind of, he did okay. I mean, it was really weird because they were going to do the big Vader Mick Foley thing over Mick Foley losing the ear in Germany and talking about that. And then it was just, they even started it. They started the tease for it. And then it was just cut off. And it's just like, we're not doing this. And so that was like a big feud that for whatever reason never happened. And then after a while there, they just were beating him. I mean, he was basically a jobber at the end. And then they finally, the word was he's out of shape. He can't go anymore. We got to keep him in short matches. Then he goes to All Japan, and he's like frickin', granted, in All Japan, he's working every night with Misawa and Kawada and Kobashi, who were like the best guys in the world at the time. But he was spectacular there. It was like comeback of the year. He probably should have won, if the Tokyo Sports Awards for MVP, weren't, essentially biased against foreigners. Vader should have probably won or could have won anyway. He won the Triple Crown. He beat Misawa, headlined the Tokyo Dome with Misawa. Him and Stan Hansen won, became a big dominant team. Then him and Steve Williams became a big dominant team. So he had that late career resurgence there in All Japan. And then, a couple of years later, I mean, age caught up to him, weight caught up to him. He had drank a lot. That was the basic thing. I mean, Big Van Vader was, he was pretty much a phenomenon from Japan that came to WCW. He had big years in WCW as champion. Really, not that he did giant business or anything. WCW wasn't doing that, but he had great matches with Sting, Mick Foley,
Flair.
The famous Flair match, right? At Starrcade, which wasn't supposed to happen. A lot of his career, was a bunch. I guess you could say that about a lot of people, but a lot of Vader was a lot of flukes. I mean, he wasn't even supposed to be Vader. That was Jim Hellwig was supposed to be Vader, and he ended up getting it because Jim Hellwig went to WWF at the time, and they were just looking for a big guy. And then the Vader thing was supposed to be like this giant angle because Takeshi Kitano, the famous Beat Takeshi guy, who's like giant celebrity in Japan. He's even well known in the United States, but giant in Japan. He was Vader's manager for all of one day. It was Takeshi and Masa Saito brought him out at that first Sumo Hall show, where he beat Inoki in 2 minutes when nobody beat Inoki. And they had the riot, the famous riot at Sumo Hall, where he got kicked out of the building. They couldn't run a show in there, which was essentially Sumo Hall at that point was their big show arena. They were kicked out for 14 months because of the riot when Vader beat Inoki. Inoki had actually wrestled Riki Choshu for like 6 minutes. It wasn't like it was a long match, but he had like a 6-minute match with Riki Choshu, and I think he won it. Maybe it was DQ finish. I don't remember the finish. But Vader comes out with Masa in the headgear. Nobody had ever seen him. Big guy, real powerful guy, and he just power slammed Inoki. It was a nothing match, because again, it only went 2 minutes, but people were so shocked at Inoki going down because he never would lose, and they just rioted. And but in time, at first, Big Van Vader was like a big guy. Was one of those big guys who got pushed because he was a big guy and because he had the gimmick. The Vader gimmick was a real compelling gimmick and everything. But in time, because he was a fantastic athlete. He was a second-team All-American college football player at the University of Colorado as a center, and would have been, he tore his patella and never played an NFL game, but he was a third-round draft choice by the Rams. And, he was out, he was out of football. He'd gained a lot of weight, and somebody had brought up, hey, you could be a pro wrestler. And somehow we contacted Vern Gagne, sent him to Brad Rangans. He got trained. Vern, he was first Baby Bull Leon White, and then he was Bull Power for Otto Vance, who loved him. And Otto Vance really was the first guy to make him a champion very early in his career. He'd only been wrestling probably a year and a half, 2 years, when Otto Vance made him, he beat Otto Vance to win the CWA title, which was the Germany and Austria group. That was at its peak. Otto had been their world champion, and he was also the promoter for like 8.5 years. And Vader beat him, or Leon beat him, Bull Power. And, he had a good run there as the top opponent for probably considered Otto's, not even probably, he was without a doubt Otto Vance's, if you ask the people from that era in Germany and Austria, who was Otto Vance's legendary rival, it's Bull Power. And then, he became Big Van Vader in Japan, and those great matches with Fujinami, and he turned into a great worker there. The famous match with Stan Hansen at the Tokyo Dome, and then WCW signed him. He had the big run, over there, and then WWF just not really monumental. I mean, he had a great opening angle with Gorilla Monsoon. I mean, that was one of the first things he did. Cornette managed him. Cornette felt that he was not booked properly, and I felt that too. I felt the guy could go, but they had decided, it's one of those things where, they have, I don't know, if you're really good somewhere else, sometimes I don't know, I want to say it works against you. But sometimes they just don't go with you, and there's people there that really wanted to keep him down for whatever reason. And when he was down, he did gain weight. That did happen. Sometimes when you get buried, and I've seen this with a lot of guys, a lot of times when guys get buried, they stop training hard, they drink more, they don't watch their diet at all, and they get out of shape, and then their performance goes down, or they lose their confidence. And he probably lost his confidence at that point, and then got it back in Japan, and, got to be Vader again. But, died, Leon died 3+ years ago. And, Mick Foley pushed so hard to get him in that Hall of Fame while he was still alive. And I don't know why they didn't. It was he was pushing so hard, and they just didn't, and now this year they are. So there's one thing I've heard also is that because the Undertaker Hall of Fame thing is going to be so big. A lot of, they and again, they're only doing the 90-minute window because they're doing the show from 10:30 to midnight, Eastern, 9:30 to 11 local time because of the lateness and everything like that. I've heard that they may announce this class, but some of the people, like, it'll happen, but it will be like digital inductions, and maybe in some of the cases, as opposed to like what they have, whatever it is. What's usual number 8, I think. So, like maybe you'll only do Undertaker's going to get the big grand treatment, and then, I would presume Vader probably will. He was a really big star, but a lot of the other guys, there's been talk of just, again with 90 minutes, not even doing them as part of that ceremony, but just doing it digitally. So that's the deal there. There was, the original idea was to do this at a stadium show. Not at AT&T Stadium, not that big one, but...
The Hall of Fame?
SmackDown in the Hall of Fame, yeah. Yeah, because the American Airlines Center was booked for a Mavericks game. So they weren't going to be able to get it. So they were looking at like a 25,000, I think, seat stadium. And then the decision, they ended up being able to get the Mavericks to move the game, and they got the Friday night for SmackDown. And so because of that, that was better. Because, they're going to have, they'll probably end up, they're at, I think, around 10,000 tickets. The place holds, would sell out at 14. So they're probably going to end up with a full house. But, 20, in a stadium, it would have been tough, especially a third night at the stadium, even though it's a different stadium. That's a lot, because stadium shows, it's really not like you can do WrestleMania at the stadium and you can do Tokyo Dome and everything like that, but wrestling is much better in arenas than stadiums. It really is.
All right, before we go to the Raw report, the update on Eric Angle.
Eric Angle was diagnosed with kidney cancer, and he already needed a kidney transplant. And Kurt is out publicly just hoping, to find someone. They're looking for someone. They're looking for a prospective donor, and he's just hoping somebody comes along. They do not have one. And time is of the essence, he said. So it's a sad situation. Kurt, Eric worked in WWE for a very short period of time. He was a great athlete too, but just didn't have Kurt's charisma. He was like the imposter Kurt Angle for in some angles, because they look pretty much alike. Eric was a year older than Kurt. So, that's a sad situation too.
All right,
we also do New Japan report too.
Oh, that's right. The holy shit, that Ishii Shingo match.
Did you see it?
Yes, I do not think it was as good as Danielson and Moxley, and I only mention that because Filthy woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning and watched it, and he thought it was a little bit better, so then I had to see it.
I haven't watched it yet. I'm going to watch it hopefully in the morning.
Yeah, the last few minutes of that match are absolutely unbelievable.
It was as good as the one in G1?
I'd have to watch the G1 match again.
Probably, I should, the G1 match was one of the best matches of last year.
Yeah. I mean, this was really good, but I watched it after I watched, 5 awesome matches on the Revolution show. I mean, it was great. And I think it was it was Last of the Dragon or Made in Japan. One of the moves at the end. I mean, it's usually
Last of the Dragon.
Well,
yeah.
I think it was Made in Japan, actually. Yeah, it was. And then he hit Last of the Dragon for the finish. But the Made in Japan, I mean, he lifted this dude up, and when he dropped him, I mean, poor Ishii fell right on his head. It looked so bad. And then he kicked out, and then Shingo killed him with a couple of other moves and hit Last of the Dragon and got the win. But they went 23 minutes, and... to me, it was like I loved the Danielson Moxley match, like literally from the opening bell to the very end. And this was one of those matches where, they built it slow. It was good, but they built it up slow and then peaked everything at the end. So, I will not fault anybody who watched and thought it was better. But I did like the Danielson-Moxley match a little bit better. But it was absolutely fantastic match. I didn't see anything else on the show, but
it's different style anyway. I mean, it's like
I don't know. It was the two styles were about hitting each other as hard as humanly possible, and that's what happened in both of those matches. They were more alike than different. I will say that.
Okay. Well, I haven't seen it, so I'll have to watch that. So the gist is that Takagi advanced, and he's going to be wrestling Tangaloa on the 13th. And Chase Owens beat Jado. He'll be wrestling Tiger Mask on the 13th. Evil beat Ryusuke Taguchi. He will be wrestling Tama Tonga on the 13th. And Hiromu Takahashi beat Sho. So 13th is Minoru Suzuki, Hiromu Takahashi, which will probably be an excellent match. And, for a tournament that is traditionally filled with upsets, there was not one upset. In fact, the highest my thought of the tournament was that the one upset that there would be Ishii over Takagi, just because Takagi beat him in G1, and it makes for a good story, and they have great chemistry and everything like that. But that didn't even happen. So essentially, all the stars. I mean, no one's knocked out. They're all there. So, I mean, we're heading for some dream matches, but I don't think we're going to get them. So I think in round 2 we're going to get some upsets, but we are still going to end up. I mean, I can't imagine not ending up with Sonata and Will Ospreay down the line in which would be Sonata and Will would be the 17th. Provided Sonata beats Hanare, which I can't imagine him losing that match, and Will has to beat Phantasmo, and I don't see him losing that match either. So that's like a big one to look forward to. And there's going to be others. Naito and Jeff Cobb looks real likely. Okada and Goto pretty likely. As far as down the line, and then. I'm trying to think what else. There's nothing else. I can't imagine. Let's see. I suppose they could do the Tongaloa upset of Shingo Takagi, but if not, I would say Shingo, would be going all the way to the quarterfinals and probably going against Evil, because it could be Suzuki or Hiromu, but I don't think so. So, but yeah, I think that we're going to be getting some, first round was the first round, and Takagi and Ishii was the showcase match of the first round. But, I think that it looks like there's going to be some real big matches when we get to the third round, and then semifinals, quarterfinals, and everything like that. That looks like it's probably going to be real strong, and whatever story they want to tell with the tournament. Because Gedo usually does, do a story in these tournaments.
All right, the Raw show on Monday night opened up with the Tornado Tag, which was Randy Orton and Riddle versus Alpha Academy, Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins. And this literally took up the first 50 minutes of the show, between interviewing everybody at the beginning of the show. They had the replay of the Roman Reigns-Brock Lesnar thing. Everybody talked about the match. The match itself went 27 minutes through, I believe, 3 commercial breaks.
Yes.
And it was a really, really good match.
I thought the match was great.
These guys, they had 27 minutes, and they worked it like it was a pay-per-view match. And awesome spot at the end when Chad Gable went for a moonsault. Randy Orton hit him with an RKO out of midair. We had Owens and Rollins super kicking everybody. Owens hit a stunner on Gable, a curb stomp, and then Riddle threw Rollins out of the ring, stole the pin. So RK Bro regained the tag team titles. Place went crazy for the finish. And then Randy Orton grabs a mic, and he cuts his promo. about how he's been here for 20 years and he has never had as much fun as he's having right now.
That's true.
Yep. And he goes, I'm gonna use the F word here. It's a word I don't think I've ever said before ever in WWE. But Matt Riddle, he says, he's my friend. And Matt Riddle's almost in tears, and the crowd goes crazy. And it's amazing to think about, because when they had that first day together on Raw,
Orton was supposed to turn them the second week.
That was my point. They had that first week together, and I thought, my God, like, these guys are great together, and we never get to see guys that actually like each other as teammates and become friends. And
well, he didn't like Riddle at first.
No, but they had their big win, and I thought, my God, they've got something here. And of course, as you noted, the plan was to immediately break them up, which is exactly what we thought was going to happen. We were like, the fans want to see this. It looks like it's fun, but they're surely going to break them up. But then they didn't. And now here we are.
It got over. It's one of the most over acts in the company.
Yep, it's months later. They haven't broken up. Now Randy Orton says Riddle is his friend, and they love each other. The fans love it.
Maybe he's going to break them up now.
Well, yeah, when he said that, I knew that Riddle was fucked, like, probably sooner rather than later. But it was a great moment. It was a great finish. The only complaint, and I have this complaint every year, is the storyline is, if Kevin Owens and Seth Rollins can't win, they will surely not have a match at WrestleMania. It's there's 2 fucking nights of WrestleMania. I mean, come on.
Kevin's not getting a match.
Well, dude, he's got an angle with Stone Cold Steve Austin, for crying out loud. I mean, he's got a thing at WrestleMania. Bigger than most everybody else.
Yeah.
Remember that year when John Cena couldn't get a match at WrestleMania?
Well, that was come on. Is that the year Wrestle Undertaker?
Yeah, they had that short. Yeah, when they didn't even advertise. It was just the impromptu match. He came out and said, "I got nothing to do here on this show," as he's on the show.
Yeah,
that was ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, Seth's got nothing to do right now.
Yeah, I think everyone should wait a week.
Yeah,
maybe 2. I'm pretty sure Seth Rollins is going to have something to do with WrestleMania.
I'm pretty sure that something's going to be worked out for Seth Rollins at WrestleMania, even if they got to call Shane back, who was actually going to be his original opponent.
Yeah.
Yeah, but who knows? Who knows? Obviously, there's all kinds of things going on there. With the Austin Theory thing. So So Vince is going to be involved, unless Vince changes his mind, but Vince is going to be involved in some way, but I don't think it's going to be a handicap match. I think it's going to be Vince, overseeing the match or in the corner. But, the heat of the match is going to be Vince and Pat McAfee for whatever reason. So, that angle, I don't know which week they're going to shoot it. We're running out of weeks. Next week is going to be, from what I gather, next week is going to be the big week where they really try to lock everything in. So, there's kind of a deadline now. Obviously, they did not talk Austin into doing a match. He's going to end up stunning Kevin Owens, but not going to do a comeback match. But they pushed it anyway with the idea that this is the first time in 19 years, but didn't he come back and stun people 10 times since then? I feel like he's done multiple stunners. Yeah, so it's whatever. Happy Corbin's also undefeated, so, And Charlotte Flair's never submitted. We just tell people what we want to tell them. Yeah. So anyway, that was the first hour, and it was a great first hour. Then we had Dana Brooke versus Tamina, which, after all of these months, not that anyone cared. They didn't care, but that's kind of the point. They finally are going to do a match together for the 24/7 title. And first, backstage, Reggie gets a big kiss from Dana. Tozawa wants a kiss from Tamina, so she actually gives him a kiss. So now it's 2 weeks in a row she's giving him a kiss, which is important. So they have a match, and... it's not that important. Well, it's important for in a moment here. So they go minute 43, and Dana pins her. And then... To me, is that... She flipped out of the Boston Crab and got a cradle, right? Yes. Yeah. So she gets out of there, and Tamina's mad, and then Tozawa's in the ring, and he says, "Tamina, you are the love of my life." And he wants her to give him a kiss
But now she won't give him a kiss. She blows him a kiss. So we are literally building backwards to a kiss that already happened. What?
I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's just whatever.
I know it doesn't matter, but I mean,
it's so
when you can't even build to a kiss, like you give the kiss away
they
twice.
Did.
No, they didn't. They gave it away twice, and then in this match, he wanted one, and she wouldn't give it to him, and she walked off, and they're like, "Oh, poor Tozawa, he can't get a kiss." I'm like, I just fucking saw him get a kiss like 10 minutes ago.
Yeah, well, she was mad.
Why is everything backwards?
She was mad. She lost her match.
God.
That's the whole deal. At least somebody cared about losing their match. You know, it's better than like, oh, I don't care about losing my match. I'm just going to make out.
I mean, she should be mad. It's been built up for like 9 months.
Well, she finally got her match, and then she just freaking choked. So there you go. Maybe she was mad about that, and then she walked off because she was pissed, and then she figured, well, I'll at least blow the dude a kiss. So she did, left. And then poor Tozawa, you know, it's like, whatever. I mean, it's obviously that's the gimmick that Tozawa's done since he got there. But it's like, man, I hate doing this stuff because but it is always the same. It's like every Japanese character in WWE, although, I shouldn't say everyone because Nakamura and Asuka, to an extent, Nakamura anyway. I can't say Asuka because Asuka was still kind of portrayed sort of childish in a lot of ways. Nakamura really not. He's like the exception of the rule. But Tozawa, you know, like is the old, you know, 1980s Kaientai Japanese guy, you know, with the, you know, the foreigner that acts like a child and everything like that. And, yeah, so it's one of the WWE tropes is stereotyping.
Never seen that before. So then we had Kevin Patrick interviewing Seth Rollins, and Seth, what do you think about not being on WrestleMania this year? And Seth is all...
Well, the card's not even done.
Oh, no, Dave, he's not on WrestleMania, you see. He does not have a path to a 2-night WrestleMania event.
Well, here's the other thing, too. Well, I mean, I guess the reality is that right now, as of right now, and of course, or I shouldn't say right now, as of a couple of days ago, because this stuff changes every minute anyway, but the Battle Royal, I mean, every guy on the roster is going to be in that Battle Royal, but the Battle Royal might be on Monday or Friday of the week of, might be at the Barclays Center on the Monday or Dallas on the Friday, as opposed to one of the WrestleManias, but it could end up at WrestleMania depending on time constraints and everything like that. You know, it just depends on how many matches they end up with, you know, how many, you know, things, you know, happen. Because again, there's fluidity in a lot of this stuff that's being worked on for WrestleMania, you know, such as the Austin thing, you know, which didn't end up being exactly what they'd hoped for. But, you know, so, but, you know, I mean, like every year we know, I mean, usually the Andre the Giant Battle Royal is on WrestleMania. And given that, every guy on the roster ends up on WrestleMania. So, like, yeah, the idea of trying to tell us that, you know, Seth Rollins in particular, who's I thought was a main event guy, was going to be the frickin' champion this time of year in the original plans. You know, like he's not going to, you know, he's not going to be at WrestleMania. It's like that's sort of like insulting us in some ways. Because
sure is.
Yeah.
So we have The Miz and Logan Paul coming out to both of their hometowns here.
You know what's interesting about how even in his hometown, those people wouldn't cheer Logan Paul at all.
Well, Miz comes out, and at first he tries...
They cheered Miz!
Well, he's doing a babyface promo at the beginning, and then he calls out...
But they cheered him when he came out before he even started talking, and then he went and turned on him and everything, of course.
So Jerry Lawler comes out, and Lawler's entire role in the show was talk about how I used to live here. I used to live in these towns. I was here when the Browns won this championship.
In 1964, Jesus Christ.
1964.
58 years ago, when frickin' Jim Brown was still playing.
And he goes, you know, one of these days, this Cleveland should host a WrestleMania. And Mizzen just says, nah, it's not going to host WrestleMania.
I don't expect it to. Well, yeah, I don't expect it. I don't expect that one.
So they turned on him, and they turned on Logan Paul. And Logan Paul, they hated Logan Paul, but you could see the way that they did this. Like, the idea is that eventually they're going to turn Logan Paul babyface. I don't know if it's going to work, but like Miz starts burying the town, and Logan Paul's looking confused, and he doesn't want to bury the town. And then Miz leaves, and Logan Paul just sort of, he goes after him because he's his friend, but he's upset, and he's asking him like, "Why are you doing this?" and everything like that. So I think the idea is like in the end, Miz and Logan Paul, probably lose. Miz gets pinned. Logan Paul turns babyface. I could be totally wrong. I don't know.
No, it probably is the idea, but it won't work because they're not going to, they're not going to cheer Logan. Look, if Logan Paul's out there talking about like this is like unique. I mean, Miz is out there, talking about Cleveland, and they're all cheering him, right? Logan Paul goes, I'm from was it East Lake? I think it was East Lake, which is one of the communities there, and I took 5th in the state in wrestling, which he did. And, my high school friends are here, and they're still booing him. Like, he was acting like a babyface through this entire thing, and they would not cheer him. I mean, and he's just ignoring the boos because, he's not a guy who's going to think on the fly. He's on a script. And they scripted with the idea that this guy was getting cheered, and he didn't get cheered. And so, but he just kept going on it. And, yeah, I mean, they expected him to be cheered. And I thought so, too. But... people just, like my son always tells me, everybody hates Logan Paul and Jake Paul. You got to remember, everybody hates them. So that's the deal. They're big celebrities, but they're not well-liked individuals.
So we had an interview with Tommaso Ciampa and Braun Breaker, who is here on this show tonight. They're going to have a tag match to lead to...
They do the 3-way tomorrow, which will probably be a great match. I'll tell you what, I thought the tag match was real good, and this was his debut on the main roster, and man, this guy is a frickin' prodigy.
Dude, he's unbelievable.
I mean, he is gonna be like he went in there, and I was thinking okay, on Raw, I mean, he has a few weaknesses still, but they're very easy to hide, and when he's in there with good people, you don't see any of them. I mean, it's amazing how good this guy is, and he's charismatic, and, he's got a good body, and he's got everything. I mean, this guy, man, they should I'm not saying rush him to the main roster, because it's probably good for him to not be on the main roster right now. Man, maybe never, the way they bring in guys on the main roster, but this guy, and I mean, they'll be behind him. But this guy should go like all the way, world champion, though, tippy-top Roman Reigns level guy. I know he's going to have to get his talking down a little bit better, but man, he's got the look and he's got the explosiveness, and he's a different level athlete than most of the guys in this company. And he's going to be a great worker. I mean, geez, it's like, I'm almost surprised he didn't make the NFL. You know what I mean? He wasn't considered a great NFL prospect. He wasn't drafted or anything like that. But what a great athlete this guy is.
Well, you remember when we were talking about NXT TV last week, and I said, why in God's name did they pin Ziggler? And you said, well, Ciampa pinned him, and then that helped make it a 3-way for next week's show. All right, whatever. So why in God's name do they pin him on this show?
Probably because he's winning the title tomorrow.
Dude.
Probably.
God.
So I'm going to guess that the idea that when I saw him get pinned, I figured, okay, he's winning the 3-way, probably by pinning Ciampa, and they'll go with the Braun Breaker Ziggler singles match at Stand and Deliver, where Braun Breaker wins the title from him.
Well, they had a good match, and then, as noted...
So I thought the match was real good.
You got Robert Roode in there, but instead, Roode distracts Braun Breaker. Ziggler gets a near fall. He hits the zigzag. Ciampa breaks it up. And then Braun grabs him, military press, pins him with the power slam, just pins him in the middle of the ring. And then, after he pins him, Ziggler grabs a mic, and now he's got to cut a tough guy promo, but he's going to win the title tomorrow. Like... God.
Well, he probably will.
Whatever.
Or maybe, we'll see. Because I think they're still going to... I mean, put it this way. If they're going to go with the singles match... I mean, if he's not winning the title, then Bobby Roode should have been the one who got pinned.
Yeah.
But,
I mean, even if he's winning the title, the guy should have got pinned because he got pinned last week.
well, the idea is that if he does win the title, it makes sense because Braun Breaker pins him, and Braun Breaker pinning him, leads to Braun Breaker challenging him, because he pinned him on the big show. So, I mean, if he wins the title, that pin makes all the sense in the world, as far as like the direction and everything like that. But yeah, if he doesn't win the title, then it just makes no sense at all. So we'll see. But, again, it's not like they tell those stories. They just do whatever they want. They don't adhere to anything, and they don't have to because, let's face it, nobody remembers who wins and loses, nor is it, except in rare occasions. And, they don't book based on wins and losses anyway. So, sometimes they do the traditional thing, and the traditional thing would be, if he's winning the title, you make a challenger before the guy wins the title, and that would be Braun Breaker right there.
Well, I mean, yeah, but you could also just do the deal where he wins a title and Braun Breaker gets a rematch at the pay-per-view. I mean, that's not that hard. I mean, dude, this guy's been a jobber on WWE television to the point where he does a promo the first night in NXT and says he loses 19 out of his 20 matches. And then, like, all the fans see the guy is basically a job guy.
Yeah.
So now your job guy's going to go win the title in NXT?
Well, the thing is, though, when he comes to NXT, he's a superstar. He's the biggest star there when he comes to NXT because they've, the idea that a guy from a real star came to NXT. Like, that's the one, one of those things like, they've conditioned people to that. Like, anytime someone from the main roster comes, AJ Styles, it's like they're a different level. And when Ziggler showed up the first time, those people went crazy, because a real star came, even if it's a guy who they beat 19 times out of 20. The fact is that, he's still really good. And, whatever. But yeah, that promo, that was one of the weirdest promos ever. I lose 19 times out of 20. And it's like, they're building you up for a championship match and you just said that. But there you go.
We had Omos beating Apollo Crews, 2 minutes, just squashed him. And then he had his stare down with Aziz. Because that's a match. These men have a path to WrestleMania. Because they're big.
Yeah.
Probably both be in the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal.
Yeah, I could see Omos winning that Battle Royal this year. But, what do you do with him?
He just keeps being big.
I guess. At some point, you're going to feed him to somebody. Or
he's going to win the title.
If there's one title, that would be, I don't know. He could. I don't know. I think that they've got like Roman Reigns. I think he's going to be champion for like the next 100 years, it looks like, or something. I don't know. They're behind him so big.
And we had an Edge video and showed him turning on AJ, and then he comes out. No music. Just comes down to the ring. And this is the weirdest promo.
Yeah, he's Aleister Black. Did you notice that?
I guess. It's a side of him we've never seen before. He's fallen in love with his side of himself. He's in control of everything he does. He's on top of a mountain of omnipotence, and the view is phenomenal. Then the lights go out, and he's gone.
Yeah, it was interesting, and it was different, and he sure got booed. I give him that. He sure got booed. And I think Edge is just such a phenomenal character. No matter, Edge can do, as good a promo as almost anybody anyway. And then he came in and he totally did a 180. This was not, I thought it was going to be one of these, explanations on, the guy turns heel, but he's really right. And he's trying to explain why he's really right, type of heel character. And he didn't really do that, although he did kind of take from, the Randy Orton thing from a couple of years ago at WrestleMania, where Randy Orton beat him down and, did the whole thing, I'm doing it for you, even though he really wasn't. Because Edge did do that, AJ, I'm doing it for you, I'm doing it because I want to beat the best AJ. But he he totally changed to this different character, and just the way I really liked it. I liked, they come out. It's a different look. It's a different feel, but he looked like a star. He looked like a demented star, but that was the idea. So I liked the segment. And also he didn't go on and on and on and on, which is the usual Edge promo is, because he can do that. He goes on and on and on and on. He went in there, he said a few words, you're expecting a 15-minute promo, and then boom, the lights go out and he's gone. Just a couple minutes in.
Kevin Owens in the back. He's distraught that he has no path to WrestleMania, but he's come up with an idea. He's going to tell us later on tonight. We had Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan versus Zelina and Carmella. 9-minute match with a commercial, and finish is preposterous. Zelina goes for a tag, but Carmella is outside the ring flirting with Corey Graves. And then
she just lost interest in the match completely. And she took off her mask, too.
Yeah. So Rhea she just grabbed and gave Zelina like the biggest riptide you ever saw in your life, and pinned her. So now Rhea Ripley and Liv Morgan are in the match. They have a path to WrestleMania, thank God. So it'll be a 3-way for the women's titles.
Yep.
Announcement of Vader going in the Hall of Fame. And then we had Finn Balor versus Austin Theory.
Did you miss the Gable Stevenson announcement?
They congratulated him.
Yep. Yeah, he's coming soon. Big.
So's Veer.
Is he still? Veer did beat Dominic Mysterio on Sunday night.
Wow.
Yeah. Gable Stevenson won the Big Tens. They brought up, they pushed that he's going to the NCAAs. Corey Graves said he's going to retire and leave his boots on the mat if he wins the NCAAs. And then he's coming to Raw. So that's the deal with him. And hopefully he's another Braun Breaker, because they want him to be. I could tell you that. Like, in fact,
I'm sure they want everyone to be another Braun Breaker.
Yeah. But
you can want whatever you want, but there aren't a lot of Braun Breakers.
There's very few. No, he's like, Braun Breaker's like Jun Akiyama or Jack Briscoe or Kurt Angle, and then maybe, he's one of those guys where you can just see in day one that this guy, man, he improved so fast. But yeah, they're really hoping for Gable, and the problem with Gable is that, obviously things can change, but the plan is for him, not to go to NXT. And it's going to be terrible because you know why? No, you don't know why.
No.
Because how is he going to learn to play to the hard camera if he doesn't spend 18 months
I'm sure. Maybe you told him there's a hard camera in amateur wrestling.
They didn't. And actually, but the thing is like, there's, pro wrestling's based on reps. And Braun Breaker's the exception of the rule. Even Julius Creed, who they're just crazy over, he's still he's a super hard worker. He's a fantastic athlete, and he's still, very green, and he's been there for a while. And Gable, I don't know how much training he's done in the last couple of months, because he's been. How much pro wrestling training are you going to do when you're in the middle of the college season, which is brutality, So, I know they've given him personal training and things like that, but, anyway, wait and see. But yeah, the idea is for him to be another Brock Lesnar. I don't know if he will be, but that's the idea.
Well, we had the U.S. title match, Finn Balor, Austin Theory. No heat for this match. And Finn Balor starts making this comeback, and all of a sudden there's Damian Priest. And grabs him by the neck, which is not a DQ. But then he throws him into the ropes. That's a DQ. And then he lays him out with his razor's edge. And Theory vanished. And that was the segment. So, looks like they've got a path to WrestleMania.
Theory didn't vanish. Theory
he came back. Actually, he vanished, and then he came back and took some selfies.
He gave him the ATL and did the selfie gimmick with him, yeah.
We had main event segment, Kevin Owens So this was something else. So Kevin Owens comes out and he says, I don't have a match at this stupendous WrestleMania, but I came up with an idea. I want to do a KO show, the biggest Kevin Owens show of all time, and I want a guest from Texas. And he says, I could choose Booker T, but he's a hypocrite. He spent most of his career calling himself Harlem Heat, talking with a fake British accent. Shawn Michaels, he says, I'm a proud Canadian, and out of respect for Bret Hart, no way I'm doing that one. And so he says, there's a guy we haven't seen in a long time.
He also mentioned JBL Blowhard.
And not doing
He did not mention Undertaker, who's also from Texas.
Undertaker's busy. He's going to the Hall of Fame, so.
He's not busy that day.
Well, we don't know what he's doing.
Actually, the Hall of Fame's Friday night, so he ain't busy Saturday.
Well, he has to go stand on that stage.
I guess.
Yeah. Anyway, there's this guy, he says, hasn't done anything for a long time, probably let himself go drinking beer, probably can't even walk to the ring, spent so many years wrestling in knee braces. It sounds to me like Austin must be in, stupendous shape right now, because Owen's playing it up like he's completely immobile and fat, which tells me he's
Well, he ain't going to be fat. He's not going to show up fat.
Of course not. That's my point. He must be in fantastic shape.
If he's in fantastic shape, he might want to do a match, but who knows? But yeah, I think he'll probably show up in good shape because he will. I mean, it's just like he ain't gonna show up out of shape. I mean, he's known about this. He's had enough lead time to where he's known he's going to be on the show. So, yeah. I mean, at least look good in a shirt and everything. I don't know if he'll take the shirt off. I saw him on what was the show? Straight Up Steve Austin. Where he did a segment where he was in like a hot tub or something. And I mean, at that time, he did not look like he was training. And that was not, cosmetic shape. He wasn't fat or nothing, but he just, he looked like a normal former athletic 55-year-old guy. But he can obviously turn it around. It's not impossible. I mean, at all. If you really, just diet for a while and train for a while, and it doesn't even take that long to get in, good enough shape if you're wearing a t-shirt. So I'm sure he'll be fine because he would not, if he was not going to be fine, he would not be out there. He's got a lot of personal pride when it comes to that type of stuff.
So he calls out Steve Austin, and then they hit Steve Austin's music, and this place went nuts. But it was just for a graphic. And they had a big question mark. Will Stone Cold Steve Austin accept this challenge to go on the KO show? And I guess he's going to answer tomorrow. Is that right? Social media?
Is it?
I thought they said at noon tomorrow or something like that he was going to have his announcement.
Okay, so I guess he will then. He's, yeah, and they've already announced it for Saturday, even though he hasn't announced that yet.
Wow.
Yeah, I figured it would be Saturday because I always figured that, you put Lesnar and Reigns on Sunday and you put Ronda Rousey and Steve Austin on Saturday. That's how I kind of figured it, and that's kind of how it's going.
Let's see if I can find the exact time of this announcement. Pretty sure they said he was going to announce it tomorrow. Could be wrong. But anyway, that was that, so there you go. Let's see. A couple of the mailbag questions here. Mailbag at WrestlingObserver.com. If I find the Steve Austin announcement thing while Dave's answering questions, I'll let everybody know. All right, this person says, was Lesnar and Reigns made a unification match when WWE has no long-term plans for one world champion because they're desperate to sell tickets for Mania and they don't care about any negative response they might get for nullifying the results of what they claim is the biggest WrestleMania main event match ever?
They've done this before. So, they've done it before. So, I don't expect it to be right away. It could be. I don't expect it to be right away, but I would, I couldn't give you a time frame of it, but it is not meant to be one champion. But like with a couple of years ago with the Ronda Rousey and Becky Lynch and Charlotte Flair thing, where the idea is that one person leaves with both belts, so they didn't call it a unification. But as soon as she did, they still, had she dropped one of the belts immediately to someone from the other brand. So that nullified that result in a sense. What was it, like 2 weeks, 3 weeks? It was real quick. So we already have a precedent of that, where we have a precedent.
This person wants to know if there are any plans for AEW to be represented in the G1 or New Japan in the Owen Hart Cup.
I have no idea. Obviously there's definitely people in AEW who want to do G1. But yeah, I don't know that anything is, I don't know that anything's done there as far as that. New Japan guys in Owen Hart tournament, I haven't heard anything. They could do it. They could get anyone they want, or not, not anyone, but they could negotiate for anyone they wanted if they wanted someone in there. Actually, it's a really good idea. Maybe you should do it. I do think that, I think it'd be really good because single elimination tournament, I think it'd be really good to have like someone from Mexico and have someone like make it like a world tournament, bring in, like a top guy from New Japan, maybe like a European guy or something, one of the, there's guys floating around, Zach, I don't know if I wouldn't do it so much with Ospreay because I think that, and Ospreay's pretty booked up, but I wouldn't do it with Ospreay because I think that I wouldn't want to debut Ospreay as one of the guys you're bringing in the tournament. But Zach, you could do it. I like the idea of the tournament being like this world. I think that's kind of like a decent idea. Have an Owen Hart tournament and make it like a World Cup. So since Owen Hart wrestled all over the world, there's like he wrestled in Europe and he wrestled in Mexico and he wrestled in Japan and he wrestled in the United States and he wrestled in Canada. Regular in all those places. So one of the few guys actually. So actually, I think that's a really cool idea for the tournament. Anyone taking notes, send it to Tony. But he's got his own. I'm sure he's got his own ideas, and probably none of that. But we'll see.
Noon Eastern, by the way, is when Austin will apparently make his announcement.
Okay.
As far as says at WrestleMania or Wrestle Kingdom this year, Shibata called an audible before his match with Ren Narita. He has not been seen since in New Japan. Given all the fanfare for their 50th anniversary, this seems strange to me. Do you know if he is being punished or is it something else?
I was told he wasn't being punished. So, I don't know.
This person here says, have you heard anything new about AEW running in the Bay Area? If nothing is announced by Friday, I feel like I'm going to have to buy tickets to the LA area show so I don't get screwed out of seeing them on the West Coast. Do you think they'll announce their Northern California dates before then?
No idea. I don't know if there's a Northern California show. I have not heard of one. There should be, obviously. They should do Los Angeles, San Jose, San Francisco. San Jose is a better place to run it than San Francisco. It's got better arenas. They could run it at San Jose State. It's on the small side, but they could, they could get 5,000 in, which for AEW for a Wednesday show it's a solid number. They should probably do something in Portland and Seattle as well. But I don't know that they're doing any of that.
All right, this person here says, do you know if Ring of Honor will continue to air on Sinclair stations? Anything new on that?
Nobody knows. Literally nobody knows. So, yeah. Tony Khan was directly asked that on Sunday night and had no answer that he could reveal because there's nothing. It appears there's nothing definite at all. So I don't know what the. It's cheap programming and everything like that to put on your syndicated stations, but. The idea of why they wanted the programming because they thought that, they could, the original idea was we put it on all our stations and then these guys come to our markets and, we get that was the idea behind, Ring of Honor television, and it didn't work. Because again, the idea is that all they needed was 750 paid per show, and with local TV in the market, you could do it. You could do that number, and then everything would be fine. Well, and there were points in time where they did beat 750 all the time. Like 2018, 2017, but most of the time they did not, and so and that's one of the reasons. And lately, of course, they never did, except for pay-per-views. So that's one of the reasons that they end up being sold.
And finally, any word on AEW running all out at a different venue this year? They've absolutely outgrown the original location.
Look, I think it's possible. I know that, in talking about the United Center versus the Sears Center, there are a few thousand more people you could put in, but it's kind of, from a profit standpoint, it was kind of a wash, because the United Center's, you could put more people in, and you could make a larger gate, but the difference in the cost of running a show in both places, I think Chris Harrington actually went through when we were at our thing, one of the Q&As that we did. It wasn't that much more profitable to sell out the United Center than it was to sell out the Sears Center. It might have been more cost effective. So, there is that. They've obviously outgrown it. That's probably going to be a first day sellout. They do have more popularity in a certain way because they sold a lot more tickets in Vegas than they did, right before the pandemic, which would have been the last time they put the tickets on sale for a pay-per-view. So they're way ahead of the pace of the last one. So that does feel like some growth as far as people willing to go to Vegas and everything like that. And Chicago's going to get tougher, but I think for a pay-per-view, it probably would still sell out. Even I don't know if it would sell at the United Center, but I think it would. But as far as moving, Allstate Arena, I think would be difficult because of WWE. I don't know if they could get that building. Obviously, they could get the United Center, but the problem is that since September, don't know. It's obviously, I don't think the season's open, so I don't know. One of the things is can you is it not booked? Because one of the things with the Punk thing was it was very difficult to get a Friday night date or a Wednesday night date at the United Center for Punk's debut. They found one and it worked out perfectly, but it wasn't like that building was not that building was used a lot.
All right, everybody, on that note, we're going to wrap it up for today. The new Observer's up on the front page. We've done shows Friday. Dave, Garrett, and Brian